Awesome. Welcome, guys, to the very first episode of my podcast. Wanted to bring back one of my boys from right at the start, someone I met like at the start of my Twitter journey, Jack Moses, man. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, bro. I didn't realize this was the first episode too.
It
I
is.
feel honored. I'm honored.
Mate, you inspired me, man. You inspired me because I actually started a podcast like ages ago. I kind of got to the holy grail of the 21 episode mark, and I just completely stopped. Because I just didn't have the network, man. Like, not many people want to do podcasting, but right now, like, I'm sure you're aware as well, the Twitter network is huge right now. So it's just like perfect time to dive right back in. But yeah, dude, give us an introduction about yourself, like a whistle stop 2 minute intro, where you've started and where you are now.
Yeah, so growing up my whole life, I was an athlete. I went to go play college football at Northwestern, and I thought that was like the pinnacle of my life. I thought I was going to try to go to the NFL, all that. And obviously that didn't happen. Dealt with a bunch of injuries, stuff like that. I wasn't actually as good as I thought I was either. Um, but so I played for 2 years there and then tore both my shoulders and my ACL and decided like, okay, I'm going to move on to the next phase of my life. And so stumbled around for like 6 months, went and backpacked Europe, discovered a love for writing, started a newsletter just for fun to family and friends to like 10 people for weeks. And I was like, I don't know where this is going to take me. I have no idea, but it's fun and I'm going to keep doing it. And so that led me into writing, finding Danco, Dakota, and then I started writing on Twitter. And then the rest is history. Became a ghostwriter as of right now, and then trying to pivot into these next couple moves, podcasts, coaching, stuff like that. But yeah, that's a high level overview, I would
That's
say.
awesome, man. That's awesome. Because I remember when I met you, man, like I think it was a couple months in and you said that you dropped a decent amount on coaching on Dakota's course. And then I was like, bro, how has this guy got so much balls to just do that? And I kind of like changed my mindset. And I feel like it's not just you, like a lot of people in this sort of space have just completely just shifted my mindset. I actually wanted to start with the thread we were talking about. So the thread I sent you today by the Do Lab. Dude's sick, man. His content is unreal. But I guess the big idea from that was like follow your natural inclinations. Because I know you said that you're kind of in this new space right now. You don't know like if this online business, this specific model is like the type of thing you're doing. Like, what are your thoughts at the moment?
Yeah, so for a while, I was kind of like running on a treadmill in a way of like just doing my ghostwriting stuff and then writing my own tweets, but like not really moving the needle forward in any way, kind of just on that treadmill. And so for the past couple of months, I've been like, okay, what's my next move? And I've gone back and forth like 4 times with this, and it's been driving me crazy. But I was thinking about starting a separate fitness account and turning it into like a fitness business because for all my ghostwriting clients, they're all fitness clients. And so I've got pretty good at writing viral fitness content and learning how to like build an entire funnel because I'm doing that for them. So like I've built their Twitter account. I built them an email list. I write their email. I funnel people to their email, and then I try to help them sign clients. And I'm basically doing all this for some of the clients, not all of them. And it got me thinking like, okay, I know a lot about fitness. Like, why don't I just do this myself? And so I was conflicted whether I wanted to put it all under my own brand and like brand myself as a fitness coach or keep it separate. And I think there's pros and cons to both, but I've come to the conclusion now that like your personal brand is just your unique combination of your unique skills and interests. And what really turned it for me is like I heard a quote from Derek Sivers, and he's like, whatever your friends are asking you to help you with, that's like your unique skill and interest. And living with Matt here in Buenos Aires, like the things that he always comes to me and asks for help with are fitness, diet and nutrition, and productivity. And it got me thinking like, why am I not talking about these type of things in my profile? And I think it's a lot of imposter syndrome because maybe I don't feel like I'm as jacked as the other fitness coaches out there, or I'm as smart about the science of productivity. But I think the conclusion I'm coming to now is like I can have a unique combination of those two interests. And my new thought, and this is really preliminary stages, like as of a couple of days ago, is like be a productivity slash fitness coach for entrepreneurs. Like combine those two unique interests. And so that's kind of what I'm working through right now, but it's still very early.
I really like that, man, because a lot of like beginner creators, they all struggle with like, oh, what's my niche? What's my niche? And I think like speaking from experience, I really struggled to really just like decide what that is. Like, what would you say to these like new creators who, I guess, want to start this whole personal branding stuff? Because it sounds to me like you're kind of in that sort of second, third, fourth step, and you've sort of overcome that first hurdle. Like, what would you say to these new guys or new girls who are trying to get into the space?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing is like your niche is you. And I know Dan Coe hits on that all the time, but it's so true. So people try to lock themselves and pigeonhole themselves into like, I'm a copywriter or like I'm a ghostwriter or I'm an agency owner. But I think by doing that, you almost constrain who you are as an individual because we are all so diverse and well-rounded more than we give ourselves credit for. And your unique niche or your unique interest will evolve as you evolve. Because if I look back 6 months ago to when I started writing on Twitter, I've learned so much more now about fitness and health and productivity and science and even like philosophy and psychology. So to brand myself at the start as that, it wouldn't have been realistic. But as I've evolved and grown as a person, so has my niche. And so that's why whenever I coach people on Twitter or just give advice, it's like, don't worry so much about like pigeonholing yourself into one identity. Like, write about what you're interested in, and your bio and your niche should evolve. Like, I probably change my bio like every week, but I think that's okay because that means you're growing and evolving. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Have you felt the same way in terms of
Yeah.
your interests evolving throughout this Twitter journey?
Yeah. So I completely agree with you, man, because I think a lot of people feel like they have to do one thing for the rest of their life because all these gurus are saying, oh, just talk about one thing. You're going to sell that thing. You're going to like make a business, blah, blah, blah. But I think I really like that, the idea that your niche sort of evolves as you develop, because the only way you can win in this game or be consistent for long enough is to just do the things that you're interested in. And if you're trying to be like a copywriter for like 2 years, okay, maybe you might be able to build a business, but are you even going to enjoy it, man? Like, I think at the end of
Mm-hmm.
the day, like, people need to realize that, like, this is something I've had to realize as well. It's like, okay, pays good money. There's a lot of things that pay good money, but do you actually enjoy it? Like, you're dropping out of college, you're quitting corporate, like, just to do something. Like, you can actually gonna enjoy it as opposed to just to make the money. So that's a kind of like little rant I had about that. But I had a really I guess like really curious about this new sort of path you're trying to go down. And is this, so you've got the ghostwriting at the moment, and is this something you're trying to like split off to just to go coaching? And like, why coaching is instead of ghostwriting? Because you're still sort of talking about the same type of content, just for someone else. Like, what's your thoughts around that?
I think it's just gaining leverage in terms of making money and being able to monetize for myself rather than being a service-based guy and helping others. Because with the coaching at first, like, yeah, it might be lower ticket. You might have to take a lot of calls, but I think it's something that is extremely scalable. Whereas ghostwriting, yeah, it could be scalable. And like, we know guys that are doing crazy amounts of money, crazy amounts of clients, but that doesn't bring me a lot of energy, right? I think what brings me a lot of energy is helping people in the domains that I feel like I have actually specific knowledge in. And as the coaching scales, you can lower your clients and raise the price while also developing these systems and then selling them on the back end as like a digital product or
Mm.
course that can earn while you sleep. With ghostwriting, you're renting out your time for money pretty much. And with coaching, you are to an extent, but I think it's more scalable to where you can kind of work yourself out of the one-on-one interaction.
I completely agree with you, man. I think you see like all these big creators as well. They all start in this kind of like agency space, and then they're like, okay, cool, I've got enough capital now. Then let me just leverage hires, so like group coaching, and then courses, and then SaaS products. Like, there's a whole like ladder that everyone kind of follows. And I'm glad, yeah, I'm
Mhm.
glad you kind of like clock that as well, and you're just trying to like make that move. I wanted to dive a bit deeper into your sort of like understanding of like, I guess, productivity and fitness, and what are your sort of like natural inclinations, if you will? Because like those are kind of like broad topics, but what I was kind of more thinking about is like, what do you just naturally do really, really well that doesn't require too much effort? Yeah, I'll give you an example, right? So at the gym, let's use gym, right? So when I started going to the gym, obviously, yeah, newbie gains, everyone's like working hard to like build all the muscles, but for me, I found my upper body really weak, but my legs I just found so easy. So I was maxing out everything with my legs just like that. And I was honestly so confused. But like, that's just how I'm naturally built. And another thing is like tricep dips. I can just like max that out, put a ton of weight. But then stuff like shoulder presses, I'm like super just like, it's tough for me, right? And I think that was
Yeah.
the very first time I had truly like internalized the idea that we are naturally good at things. And we need to try to lean into those as much as we can and not let the external environment sort of dictate what we should and shouldn't do. So I guess for you, that was just a fitness example, but for you, what are the sort of like traits, what are characteristics that you feel like you naturally are better, have an unfair advantage to others?
I think the biggest thing for me is setting up systems rather than goals. And this is a big Scott Adams thing that I've really started to use lately. So for example, like when I go home next week, I already have my entire systems built out for how I want to spend that month. And so it's going to be like 6 a.m. wake ups, like sunlight in the eyes with a walk, meditation, straight walk to the coffee shop, 90 minutes of deep work, 15-minute rest, 90 minutes of deep work, 15 minutes rest, an hour or so of deep work, and then go to the gym. And then I should be done with my work day and fitness by like 1 p.m. And that sounds very basic, but there's a lot of like nuance that goes within those systems as well. So for one example is like a little trick that I've learned is before you go to bed at night, put your phone on airplane mode and don't turn it off airplane mode until you're done with all your work blocks in the morning and the workout. And so then you're not letting the world in until like 1 p.m. and you're solely focused on your own shit. And this actually makes me think back to like December. Remember how we were like, dude, let's just pump a bunch of threads out in the month of January and grow our accounts. And I remember when I was home for winter break from school in December, like I set up these type of systems for the first time. And I would go to the coffee shop and I'd get like 4 or 5 threads in the morning before anybody could even contact me. And at the time, like I wasn't seeing any ROI on that because I literally just saved all the threads for January. But then I saw the ROI after I dropped all those threads in January and grew like 6 or 7,000 followers. So if I set the goal of like grow 7,000 followers in a month, I don't think I would have done it. But because I just implemented systems, the goal took care of itself. And I mean, it's very cliche, but it's like you have to fall in love with the process and then the outcome takes care of itself. So all in all, I think like I love systems. Systems are awesome. Systems with your diet, systems with your exercise, systems with your work, networking even. Like I'm trying to systematize networking to where I'll have like an hour a day where I have a task list of like 15 minutes engage on Twitter, 5 minutes talk to people on Telegram, 5 minutes talk to people on Instagram, etc. So just within these blocks, creating systems within these blocks that accomplish the goals without really focusing on the goals.
That's really interesting. I think this is kind of like where you and I kind of differ because I've tried doing that whole like just micro time blocking, and for me it's just so overwhelming because I'm like, what do I got to do next? What do I got to do next? And so I think it's just the structured versus unstructured mind, and I just find that super interesting that the systems. So when you do these tasks, when you like actually try to just like smash them all out, are you like super focused? Have you been able to, how should I say, really refine the level of focus that you have doing these tasks and you just get like crazy amount of work done?
Yeah, I'd say when I'm locked in and focused, and like the biggest thing is like the night before. That's the biggest thing. It's like if I can write down each task within each work block. So like if I have 3 work blocks, I'll say work block 1, I'm going to write this personal thread and I'm going to write like 20 tweets. Then I'm going to take a rest. Work block 2, I'm going to do my 3 client threads. Work block 3, I'm going to work on the business and like actually start to build out this fitness plan or productivity plan. And so if the night before I get 8 hours of sleep, I write down my tasks and I turn my phone on airplane mode, and then I wake up, get sunlight in my eyes, walk, hydrate. If I knock all those things out, the work takes care of itself. But I'm not perfect. And this is a big reason why I'm actually going to be going back to Illinois to kind of reset these habits, because in Buenos Aires, especially over the past couple of weeks, I haven't been as locked in, especially at night. So like for example, last night I was like hanging out with this girl, and like we were up fairly late, and like this morning I didn't get up till 10 a.m. and I kind of like half-heartedly edited my newsletter and sent it out, and then I'm hopping on this podcast now. And so like in an ideal world, I would have got to bed at like 9 p.m. last night, woke up, did my client work, edited my newsletter, timestamp my podcast that I'm dropping later today, but I'm going to have to do that after this podcast because I'm not taking care of the stuff the night before. However, there are trade-offs. Like I'm not saying I regret like staying up late or anything, but I think going through periods of time where like you're really locked in for a month or two, and then you take the foot off the gas a little bit, I do think it's good. Because I think if you're just always super systematized and in a monk mode, you become too structured, I think, and you lose some of that creativity that comes from being super unstructured, staying up late, meeting interesting people. So it's all a balance, dude. That's really what I'm trying to get at too. Like my new branding and stuff, like with the yin yang, and that's the only thing I have tattooed on me. Actually, I got it tattooed on me last summer. Was a yin yang, and what it is, it's a reminder for me of being balanced because I operate at these extremes. Right, I get super structured for a month, and then I can completely go off the rails and be degenerate for a month. And so I'm trying now to build a system where when I'm back in Illinois, it'll be like 6 a.m. to 1 p.m., very structured and very disciplined and very systematized. But 1 p.m. to 9, 10 p.m., I want to be very unstructured. I want to be very spontaneous. And if I want to read, I'll read. If I want to go for a walk with my dog, I'll go for a walk. So kind of operating at those two extremes to come back to a balance. And that's ultimately like what I want to coach people on as well. For people who want to live that type of 4 hour workday balanced life, like how can you set up your life and systems in a way where it becomes easy?
Yeah, honestly, man, I think there's gonna be a massive demand for that because I think as an entrepreneur, and I'm sure you've had this experience as well, but for me personally, there's always more to do, man. Like you're like, okay, cool, I've done these things off my checklist, but I've got more time. I've got a couple hours, I've got 3 hours, I've got an hour before I take the tube somewhere, take the train somewhere, before I meet this person. And you're like, cool, let me just do some more stuff and some more stuff. Before you know it, you just spent the whole day just working, and then happens again and again and again and again and again and again. That's something I just keep falling into. And one massive realization is that everyone else is doing the same thing. All these entrepreneurs are doing the same thing. Another realization is that it's a long game. It's like you kind of have to self-pace yourself. Like, okay, how fast do you want to go, and what is your output, and also how much of your mental health are you sacrificing to do another extra hour of work? There's all these different factors. So I love that you're trying to coach people into this, because without like actual accountability and a mindset shift, it can be very difficult to, how should I say, like pull yourself out of these situations. Like my parents, for example, they were like, dude, you never rest, man. Like why you never rest? And I was like, because I'm always on, man, because I'm obsessed with the game. I'm like hustling, I'm doing this kind of stuff. I'm like, I'm building, man. I came up with all these excuses, and I just felt in my mind, I'm like, why am I trying to rationalize this? Is it actually something I actually want to do? Because it's not. It's frankly not, right? But in my mind, I'm like, oh, I just want to make it to the next level. That's why I'm putting all this effort. Like, you guys don't understand. You're not entrepreneurs. Like, all this kind of stuff in my head. I'm like, bro, what? I'm curious. Like, what do you have that experience? And if so, like, how do you sort of deal with that sort of mental, that mindset?
Yeah. So the first month or so here, it was like pure obsession. And I think when you feel that obsession and that burst of energy, I think you should ride with it. But you have to be careful because that's how you can burn out, because you work yourself so much to where some days you're just like, I can't do anything. Like I'm staying in bed the whole day. And so I think coming back to that balance of giving yourself 7, 8 hours in a day where you're really resting and relaxing and just reading and consuming podcasts and just enjoying life, that allows you to come back the next day and like hit the ground running. Whereas if you're always kind of on, I think your productivity is actually going to be, it's going to be lower. And so that's why I want to operate at those extremes. Like when I'm on in my deep work, I'm in my deep work. Nobody can get a hold of me. I'm focused. But in the rest of the day, trying to, and it's hard, but trying to completely turn it off so that the next day you hit the ground running again. Or else you're kind of always operating at this like in between state. And this is something that I got from Dan Coe, because he has a great YouTube video, like the 4 hour workday, and how he doesn't let himself work more than those 4 hours, because like he talks about bringing your ideal future into the now. And so for you and I, like our ideal future would be work a couple hours a day and then spend the rest of the time enjoying life. Like that's why we want to pursue this path. But if you don't constrain yourself to those 4 hours, you just end up working all the time, because as an entrepreneur, your business is completely reliant on you, right? There's always something more you could be doing. Whereas when in a 9 to 5 job, you clock out, you don't have to think about it. And that's why there's trade-offs. And that's why some people may prefer the 9 to 5. However, I just don't think you can create that life of freedom without it.
Yeah, no, I really like that, man. It's really interesting because the entrepreneurship is the ultimate sort of accelerator for your personal development. Like you very clearly spot your weaknesses and where you naturally just like maybe have like, I don't know, you don't listen to certain people because they don't like, you just see the weaknesses like abundantly clearly. And I just love being able to like work through them through a vehicle of like online business, like talking to you, like being able to work through this kind of stuff. Because like at the end of the day, what happens? Like we're just trying to max out all of our character stats. So yeah, the fact that
Yeah.
I love the idea as well, what you said about bringing the future, or what Danko said about bringing the future life to now. Because at the end of the day, the goals are nice to achieve, but what is the game we're trying to play? It's an infinite game, right? So it's going to be a lifestyle because the goal isn't so much a destination, it's like the journey, it's the process of doing everyday motions. So I love that, man. I love that. And I think, yeah, I think on my side, like, I sometimes give myself too much pressure to get things done because I'm like, this is what I have to do, this I need to do this. So yeah, I like having just even this conversation, man. It's really just like changed my perspective on just how I work and how I want to achieve goals. I actually wanted to ask you, so since starting on Twitter, since starting this whole online business journey, like what are some things that you know now that you didn't know before? Like what are the sort of key lessons that you kind of want to tell that Jack Moses 6 months ago or someone else who's just trying to start their journey? Like what would you tell them? Because it's not all sunshine and rainbows, bro.
It's definitely not. The one thing I would say, and I tweeted this yesterday actually, after having this exact realization based on this type of question, if I was going to go back and tell myself at the start, like, what are the key drivers in this? It's write about what you're interested in, write every day. That's how you get better. It's literally just putting in the reps and practicing, like hitting the gym or anything. You get better by doing the thing. So write every day, write about what you're interested in, share your story. That's how people are going to resonate with you, or else you're just a search engine spitting facts at them. And I think the biggest thing is make friends. Like Twitter is the greatest place to make friends. And that's why I love having a podcast too, because I've made so many really close, like lifelong type friends just by talking to people on the internet. And people try to overcomplicate it. They go about it like networking and like trying to scam people and trying to sell people in the DMs. And I just don't really believe in that. I believe in making genuine connections and then offering to see if you can help anybody in any way and just mutually becoming friends and wanting to see other people win. That's something else that I don't think a lot of people on Twitter feel. Maybe they do. I think actually there's a lot of positive some people on Twitter, but I do know there's some people that are always like in competition. And it's like, for me to win, this person has to lose. This person, oh, their thread went viral. Fuck, like, damn, I'm pissed. But in reality, we can all win at the creator game. And I actually think it's easier to win when you go about it with that mindset of, I want to become friends with somebody and I want to see them genuinely win. They'll feel that. They'll resonate more with your content, share it with their audience, etc. So yeah, make friends. If you're at the start, make a ton of friends.
You know what? Like I honestly back this idea so much because by making friends, not so much like engagement pods or like transactional stuff, like actual friends, right? You solve every single problem that a beginner creator has. You solve the consistency problem, you solve the question, like specific knowledge, you solve the growth strategies, you solve the mindset, you solve the like every single thing you need is solved by a network of friends. And I love the idea that you brought up, which was the positive sum game. So I'll give an example of one, like just good example that I sort of experienced this week. So a potential sort of client, he was talking about how he had like a call where he was helping out another guy who was directly competing with his agency because he's like a big entrepreneur, right? He's like competing with the agencies. And I was like, well, so why are you helping out this guy? Like, isn't he like direct competition? And he was like, well, no, man, I think there's enough people to go around. There's enough demand to go around that everyone gets a piece of the pie. And so for me, I'm just trying to be like positive sum, right? Every single person I want to build these deep relationships with, because you never know what opportunities come your way. Like just because they're competing with you now doesn't mean that you won't be able to collaborate in the future. It doesn't mean you can have these like really cool opportunities. And that kind of realization, I was like, okay, cool. So how does this work? And so it came to the realization that networking is probably one of the biggest compounding effects next to like money, right? So it's like building these relationships. So let's use Twitter as an example. When you're first starting out, you're building these relationships. You're meeting like 10 people, let's say. They're all like 100 followers or whatever, and then they keep growing over time, and you're gonna keep meeting more people, and so you're building this network who all grow over time, who will eventually all get to like 50, 100K, and it's just a massive network. And I'm just like, how do people not see that this is literally just win-win-win? Because they're going to give you business opportunities if they like you. And that's something else I've realized, because last two people yesterday, they were all from referrals, man. I'm like, what? This is crazy, bro. Anyway, yeah.
100%. Yeah, same with my ghostwriting clients. They're both from referrals, and both from having a podcast, actually, like in the weirdest way possible.
Crazy.
Whereas a lot of people that are in like the ghostwriting agency game, they're really concerned with like cold outreach, cold DMs, and like that's a valid approach. I just don't really like it. Personally, I'd rather build the relationships and then have people either come to me, or B, say, hey, Jack did a good job for me. He's a good guy. Like, you should look into him. And I like the point you make about the engagement groups, because I've been in various engagement groups throughout these 7-8 months on Twitter. And what it seems like it happens is like they all die out eventually, because there's no actual relationship there. But since you and I talk on Telegram all the time, we're just shooting voice messages and shooting the shit. When I see you on the timeline and I like what you say, I'll give it a retweet. I'll give it a like. And it's not this transactional thing. It's like, no, like Fernando's my boy. Like, all these other people are my friends. Like, I like what they're saying. I want to give them a retweet. Versus if you're on all these engagement groups, and I think it's valid at the start, especially, and there is some transactional benefit to creating those type of relationships, but the relationships that compound over the long run are the friendships. And like Naval says, he's like, all the best returns in life come from compound interest in relationships, in your health, in your fitness, in your finances, everything. And I think the one thing I would say to people at the start is change your language from networking to making friends. Like, it will be so much better for you and everybody you interact with.
100,000,000%, man. And I think that goes hand in hand with understanding like what a long-term game actually is. Like,
yeah,
this is kind of controversial, but I feel like money Twitter is very short-term focused. They're very like quick money, quick cash now. And like a lot of people don't realize, and I kind of fell into this trap as well. It's like, oh, you got to close every single call. You got like DM outreach. You got to pitch your offer first, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, bro, why is it so intense, man? Why is everyone pitching the same DMs, doing the same thing, trying to like hard sell in every first call? I'm like, bro, like chill. I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
and
100%. Yeah, it's like, it's crazy when you think in the long term how your day-to-day actions or your perceptions of your day-to-day actions change, because like you're 23, right?
Yeah, turning 24 in a month, 22. In 2 weeks actually.
Okay. Oh, happy early birthday, bro.
Thank you, sir.
But anyways, like if you zoom out and you say, okay, this personal brand is going to live with you for the rest of your life, like the day-to-day right now, it doesn't matter maybe as much as you think. And I think some people fuck themselves over by treating it like a competition or being like passive aggressive in the comments. Like there's a couple of people that come to mind, and it's like, dude, like, okay, you're like a 20-year-old kid right now. You see it as a competition, but in 20, 30 years, when we also have these personal brands, and like, let's say for you, for example, some kid is like passive aggressive on your Twitter comments. Let's say you become one of the biggest podcasters in the world. Like that could realistically happen. We don't know. And that kid now has fucked himself over, because if anybody asks you for your opinion on that kid, you're going to be like, oh no, he's an asshole or something, just because they wanted to be in competition and win at 20 years old. But it's just so short-term thinking. Like this personal brand is going to live with us forever. And that's another realization I've been having lately. When I moved down to Buenos Aires to like become this full-time entrepreneur, I was like, I got everything figured out, bro. I'm a full-time entrepreneur. And what I've realized is like, holy shit, I'm really young. I still have a fair bit of immaturity to work out of my system. Like this is a long game. This is just the 1% of 1% of my entire entrepreneurial journey. So yeah, it's crazy how your perception can change when you start to think in the long term. And when you become a full-time creator or entrepreneur, the people you compare yourself to changes. So when I was in college, I was kind of just comparing myself to all the people who were just starting out on Twitter. But now that like this is my thing, like I have to make moves full time, I'm comparing myself to Dan Coe now. Like that's just not healthy, honestly. it's cool to be inspired and look up to them, but the people you compare yourself to changes over time. But yeah, I went on a bit of a
That's
rampage
awesome.
there.
Nah, it's cool, bro. It's cool. Two things. So I want to get into Buenos Aires in a minute, but just to wrap up this topic, I want to ask you, in terms of consistency, in terms of the accounts you see around you, how many of them, like, I kind of know this answer as well, but how many of them have dropped off since you started? And like, give the audience like a clear picture of how easy it is to win if you just be consistent.
Yeah, if you just stay in the game, like whatever you're doing, and you just get a tiny bit better every day, like success is inevitable. Hormozy talks about like he's like, you only lose if you quit. If you just stay in the game and stay in the arena every day, even if you don't realize it, you're learning more. You're becoming more familiar with the space. You're becoming more familiar with your writing. You're learning your voice through your writing. And I'm sure you know this stat, but it's like I think it's like 99% of podcasts don't make it past episode 3. And like out of those 1%, only like 1% of that 1% makes it past episode 20, which is wild because that just shows you if you literally just stay alive, you're already selecting yourself into like the 0.1% of the entire world of podcasting. But I think it comes down to people's expectations because people hope to like start a podcast and then within like 5 episodes get Joe Rogan on and like have 1 million views. Like that's not going to happen. If you're not willing to put in the time for 10 years and not see any results, like don't even start. Don't even start because especially with podcasts and like a newsletter and like those are the real long-term games. They're going to take years to compound. But once you hit that tipping point, like there's a great chart by Chris Williamson. His first 4 years of this podcast, like very close to 0 growth. And then over the past year or two, it's like exponential. But nobody saw those 4 years in the past of just grinding with like very low views and just him probably beating his head against the wall and being like, why am I even doing this? But now they look at him now as like, oh, he's a big time podcaster. Like, I want to do that. But they're not willing to put in the 10 years before.
Yeah. I listened to a Tom Bilyeu podcast actually, and he was talking about how success is when you choose something that you are willing to struggle with for years and years and years without a single return, as opposed to how much money you can make from it, as opposed to it's like reframing that idea. Because at the end of the day, if you just like what you're doing, you're willing to suck at it for like 10 years. It doesn't matter if you're successful or not, because you're just gonna do it, right? And that's the easiest way to like just keep on going. Because I think a lot of people just give up so quickly. And going back to what you said about network, that honestly, if I didn't have this network, it would have been 100 times easier to quit. Because you have a network.
Yes.
I'm like, if Jack's getting all these followers, I'm like, it's rude if I don't, right? It's rude if I don't keep up, right? Because we're literally on the same journey. I don't want you to like overcome this thing, and then I'm like, I gotta do it now as well. And it's just like, it's just a bit of a competition, but like a healthy competition. And so like, just to wrap this up, like in terms of your Twitter journey so far, like, how many accounts from when you started have you noticed that have just dropped off?
Yeah, it's interesting because at the start, like I'm thinking back to when I was interacting with a lot of people that were around like 100, 200 followers. And sometimes you see them stop, take a break for a month and come back, but it just kills all your momentum, right? And you just have to show up every single day. I think it's hard to put a tangible number, but there are like a few people that come to mind that just decided to like, life gets in the way or Twitter's not for them. And like, dude, even I've had those thoughts sometimes. Like, if I share a super vulnerable story and like I'm thinking about like, oh fuck, like so many people just read this thing about me, like it makes me cringe or it makes me feel kind of like very vulnerable. And then I'm like, damn, it'd be kind of nice to just go into obscurity and not have anybody know what I'm doing. However, I think the benefits of the personal brand outweigh the benefits of quitting like by a million. So yeah, I mean, sometimes it's tough to see also like some of the people you connected with like way back at the start and they haven't really like moved the needle or made any progress and they're kind of just like beating their head against the wall. But at the same time, like they're still showing up every day. And so that tipping point could happen. But yeah, if you stop tweeting for like a week or a month, like it's going to be tough to get back into it.
100%. And the drop off rate is just so fast. It's like exponential. Like even in my sort of experience, I've seen a lot of accounts that I started with. they got to like 3-4K, dropped off. They just started dropping off, and it's like it's just you just got to stay in long enough, and you're gonna win. That's it.
Do you think it's the pressure that gets to them?
I think people just fall out of love with it. I had a moment like the last few weeks.
Yeah.
I just fell out of love, man, because everyone's like copying the same three gurus, copying the same formats, same ideas, ChatGPT threads, literally just the same regurgitated stuff. And it's just like, dude, like I don't want to read all this Twitter growth stuff anymore. I think it's just because the stage we're at is just kind of different. But I think when you're just starting out, it's like really good content to consume. Because oh, I'm learning about how to grow on Twitter. But I think at our stage, and also I think the number of accounts sort of like at this sort of like 10K and up size or like 5K and up size, it starts to diminish like exponentially. And so when you get to like the sort of upper ranks of like the 100K plus, it's like how many of those are there? Not that many.
No. That's wild to think actually that we're talking now and we both have like 10K plus followers, because when we first became friends, like I think I had like 800 followers and you had like 500
Yeah.
followers back in maybe like November, December. So even you saying that, he's like, yeah, accounts like us being over 10K. I was like, oh fuck, I forgot about that, honestly.
Yeah, dude, because this is the beauty, right? Because we just get adjusted to new levels, like whether it's like followers, whether it's money, whether it's like lifestyle, everything just adjusts so quickly because it moves so fast
Yes.
that we don't even realize that was a few months ago or like 5 months ago, whatever.
Dude, if you would have told me like I'd be able to leave school and be doing this full time 5 months ago, I'd be like, you're fucking lying. But now it seems like normal, right? You hedonically adapt. And it's a blessing and a curse because you always want more, which is good. It keeps you striving, but
Mm.
you're never quite satisfied.
Because you completely. I remember talking to you. You know, now I've got one more year left. Like I'm just gonna finish college. Like I'm good, man. No, I'm not gonna do this whole Twitter stuff. And now you're like, boom, drop drop out, then go to Argentina. Then
Yeah. No, my entire belief structure flipped around that once I signed my first two clients, and I was like, I can sustain myself now. And I got really big into James Smith. He's a podcaster, like Instagram fitness guy from the UK, actually. And he had a quote that hit me so hard. He was like, worst case scenario, like all my social media goes away and I like work as a trainer at a jujitsu gym a couple hours a week, like walk the dog on the beach, like maybe work at a steakhouse. Like that would be a pretty cool life. And I thought, like, holy shit, I would rather do that, like work as a waiter at a steakhouse in some place that I love, like living for cheap and then trying to figure out the online stuff on the side, than get any job that a college degree would like quote unquote qualify me for. Like that life to me just, oh my gosh, it feels kind of like prison looking back on it, because I worked a corporate internship for a couple months and like at the time I didn't realize that I didn't like it, but now juxtaposing it with like how my current life is today, like it's fucking unreal. I was working 8-10 hours a day unpaid for free, like plugging copy and pasting shit from Excel, and just like had no purpose or meaning. And now I go to the coffee shop for like 3-4 hours in the morning and like that's it.
unreal, man, unreal. And it's one of those things where once you discover it, there's no looking back. But also, a lot of people don't because they're like, oh, what's a content creator gonna make? Like, oh, they just get like there's influencers on. They just take photos on Instagram or like just post YouTube videos about their life. Like, dude, it's so much more than that. And I wish people like could actually like fully absorb like the power of this new economy that's kind of like being driven and growing rapidly. Like, what are your thoughts on that whole sort of this whole sort of like playing these two different games? Because I know you're quite passionate about this topic as well.
Yeah. So with those people who don't really see it like that, I completely understand why. It's just a lack of awareness, right? Because from the outside, you can't really understand like the nuances of it. And from the outside, it looks like, oh, Fernando's just trying to get clout. He's trying to grow followers or like get famous or something. But it's about a lot more than that, because like, let's take a fitness coach, for example. Let's say a fitness coach grows to like 50, 100,000 followers, and through his writing and through his teaching and through his coaching, yeah, he's making money and living a great life, but he's also raising other people up, right? That's what the creator economy is. And that's why, like, we could go super philosophical down this rabbit hole, but I honestly think the creator economy is like the next stage of human evolution in terms of like actualizing the general population. Because as you and I level up and continue growing, the only way we're going to continue growing our accounts and businesses is if we level up as actual human beings, right? And so through doing that, we're also going to be raising the collective consciousness of the people who follow us. And then they will have more awareness about fitness, health, productivity, whatever it is. And then they'll be able to teach the new people below them. And so as more and more people potentially leave the corporate world, get into the creator economy, I just think humanity as a whole, like, I think this is the next evolution, especially with AI.
That's really interesting, man. But I guess to counter your point, because I do completely agree with you, right? But to counter your point, I think the amount of effort it takes to do something that's not been given to you to do is the friction of that is very high. And so I think even if it is the better, even if it's objectively the better option, I think a lot of people have already outsourced their whole life, their beliefs, their job, their education, to the point that all of these tough decisions and all of these tough action steps that they need to take requires a lot of friction, and you need some level of desire to sort of stray away from that and actually go down this new path. Like, what are your thoughts around that?
It's very true. And I'm thinking for myself, like, had I not gone through some tough shit, I wouldn't have ever stumbled across this path. And I think a lot of people are caught in this trap of like comfort where their situation isn't so bad that they're going to change their life. So they stay where they are. So, for example, like, let's say somebody is like in decent shape, but not great shape. They're going to be comfortable with that. And they're never going to like get the 6-pack abs because their level of pain isn't big enough to drive a change. Whereas if somebody got like 20, 30 pounds overweight and they felt like the pain of how that was really affecting their lives, they might have a better chance of actually getting the 6-pack abs because they felt how shitty it felt to have that pain. And so for myself, like, because so much shit went wrong with like college football and like mental health fell off a cliff, it led me to this like valley of despair almost of like I need to find something more than this. However, because we push so many people to just follow the conventional safe path and like it's good enough to live a good enough life, why would they ever take a risk on something more? But when you have very little to lose and you're like, frankly, are hating your life, that gives you the courage to take the risk because there's not as much to lose. So I'm curious for you though, because you kind of lived out what I was going to do, like getting the good consulting job, like impressing the parents, getting a good salary, like living a comfortable life. What inspired you to like take that next step? Was it pain or was it more, oh, there's more than this?
I think it's both. I think it sounds kind of arrogant, but I mentioned it in our podcast as well. Like, even back in the day when I was like super insecure kid, super shy kid, I always felt like I was meant for more, for something else. I've always thought that in my mind. I was like, is this really it? Is this literally what my life amounts to? Literally just doing some exams, getting a job, tapping away at a keyboard, staying at work till like 9 p.m. when everyone else is gone, and it's just like dim lights, and I'm just like having existential crises, and I'm just like, bro, like there must be something else. And it's just a constant, how should I describe it, level of exploration, because I've always been into like business. It's always been something I've wanted to do, but I never had the conviction and confidence to do it, and I didn't know what vehicle to choose to build a business. And so for me, it was always just like stay on a conventional path and play this game until I know the other game I want to play. And so like the last year has been really just finding that game for me. And so right now I feel like I've kind of found this vehicle to drive up in terms of online business. And now I can actually, with, by the way, a really killer group of people around me. So with that, I feel absolute conviction that I can make it. And then also, I think for me, I needed to feel the pain of working a corporate job that I didn't like, because the perception before you start it is that this is the next biggest thing. Get into investment banking, get into consulting, get into law. Like everyone's doing it. All the smartest people are doing it. Look at their CVs, look at all this stuff. And we have the perception that it's all like just crazy. You're going to travel the world. You're going to do this cool stuff, but reality hardly ever meets expectation. So for me, it has been a level of just understanding and being aware of this other life that I could live potentially if I continued it. And I think that pain was enough for me to just be like, nah, I'm out. I'm tapping out, G.
Yeah. Damn, that is so cool how we've come to the same conclusion. But dude, when I was in college, like I wanted that life so bad. Like I was the one applying for like the Goldman Sachs internship. I made it to their super day, like the final round of interviews, and they asked me the difference between consulting and investment banking. And I didn't know. I had no fucking idea. But this is what I wanted to do so bad, right? I wanted to be the investment banker at Goldman Sachs. But like if I step back and ask myself why now, it was purely for like social validation and status.
100 million%.
And so I'm so grateful that I didn't get it. But at the time, it was like, dude, this is all I want. And I think it's because, especially when you go to university, like everybody is playing the same games, right? Everybody wants to be an investment banker. So you kind of blindly play the same game without stepping back and questioning, like, wait, why am I even playing this game in the first place? And I think the one thing that maybe could help people like make that jump is just cultivating some type of self-awareness and like taking some type of retreat. Like go somewhere by yourself, get out of the rat race of school, job, internship, get out of it for 3 months and just get lost. Like just get completely lost. And through that, you'll see the world through a different lens because you take a little break from playing all these games and you're like, wait, why am I even playing these games in the first place?
Dude, that was awesome, man. Let's switch gears then. Let's talk about Buenos Aires. Come on. Habla conmigo en español.
Oh, muy bien, muy bien.
I'm joking. Go on.
Yeah, I was like, fuck, are we gonna have to talk in Spanish? Yeah, so my Spanish is okay. It's gotten a lot better since I've been here. I've went like on and off for years of learning Spanish, taking a long break, learning it again, never taking it that seriously. And so at first it was super uncomfortable because the accent here is very different than like Spain or Mexico. And so I was like having a really hard time understanding anybody. But yeah, so I've been here for like 2 months now. And I was telling you before the podcast, like I'm deciding to go back to Illinois next week. And overall, Buenos Aires to me has been a massive learning experience. And the mindset shift and the level of understanding kind of switched last week. So I was hanging out with this girl from Buenos Aires and she asked me the question, like very deep question, which I love. And she was like, who are you? Like, who actually are you? Like, tell me in a sentence, who are you? And I was like, I have no fucking idea. I really have no idea. Like, how did I end up in this spot? And so, yeah, these first 2 months is like, okay, full-time entrepreneur, living on my own, traveling the world, making online income, like doing everything by myself. Like I said earlier, it's been a real learning experience that like I have so far to go and I have so much to figure out about myself and how to navigate the world. This has been a great first step and it's like showed me that I want to do this like full time. Like I am going to do this full time. I'm capable of doing it full time, which is awesome because for the 6 months prior to this, the dream of being an entrepreneur was kind of just like a thought, right? It was like a thought, like I would love to be an entrepreneur, but now I'm actually doing it. And so now I have proof that like I can do this. What I need to reevaluate now is like, I'm trying to become a 6-figure entrepreneur with some habits that are like a degenerate college kid. So that has been the biggest takeaway for me. So my plan right now is go back to Illinois for about a month, get in a really good routine, be around family, kind of like block out the world for a little bit, get my habits really back in order. Cause I'm somebody, like I said earlier, I thrive on systems and routine and structure and habit. Get those really back in place and then make the next move.
Awesome, man. Give me literally 2 seconds. I'm going to draw the blinds.
No, you're so good.
Make it.
Is that going to be a nightmare to edit?
Nah, it should be good, bro. I've just noted the time. Cool. Awesome. So tell me a little bit more about this sort of like degeneracy slash being a six-figure entrepreneur, because for me, right, I feel like I've like dialed down all of my habits, my nutrition, my kind of like mental health, my like physical health, to the point that I actually enjoy like not drinking alcohol, not smoking, not doing this degenerate stuff, not eating, like, I hate eating junk food. Like what are your sort of like, where are you at in terms of your relationship with degenerate activities, quote unquote, and then the healthy stuff, and then like how are you trying to like use it to get to the six figures?
Yeah. So I think what you said about like you're so dialed in right now. It seems like you have a clear focus and goal. Like you're trying to get this coaching thing, you're trying to leave your job. You have a very clear focus and goal. For the 6 months that I started writing on Twitter, I was the same way. I had no urge to eat any junk food. I had no urge to really smoke weed. I had no urge to drink or anything and party. And I was so dialed in because my goal was so clear. It was like, find a way to make income on Twitter and do this full time. And so now that I've done that, I've lost like that clear goal and that next step. And I've taken on so many different vectors that are pulling my attention. So like I wrote about this yesterday in my thread, but I have like my own newsletter, my own Twitter that I'm trying to grow. I have clients that I write their Twitter threads for. I have a client that I write his newsletter for. I have a YouTube channel that I've been trying to start, a podcast, a fitness account that I'm trying to start. And then I'm also still trying to like meet girls in Buenos Aires. I'm trying to hit the gym. I'm trying to do so much at one time that it becomes overwhelming. And then what I do, and this is like what I've realized about myself, is I tend to escape. I tend to escape and block it all out. And so for me, that sometimes looks like weed and junk food, like real shit. And that's another reason why I want to get back. And now I have this clear goal of like, I want to launch this coaching offer. I want to get back on my good habits and routine because, dude, if I'm going to be a productivity fitness coach, but I'm not living up to it myself, like one, that's not good for reputation. And two, I wouldn't be able to look at myself in the mirror at night. Like, and there's this dissonance right now because those habits that I had for those 6 months, so fucking dialed in, so disciplined, like people thought I was insane. Now I've kind of like swung back to the other end of the pendulum. And people would probably say like I'm being way too hard on myself because I'm still probably much more systematized and disciplined than like 99% of the population. But I hold myself to a very high standard. And when I don't live up to that, it's this cognitive dissonance that just causes this internal struggle between like who I could be and who I'm acting like. And something else that I've learned about lately is attachment styles. And I know this is kind of going on a tangent, but so there's 3 main attachment styles in relationships primarily. So it's secure, avoidant attachment, and anxious attachment. And what I've realized after reading that book is I think I have a bit of an avoidant attachment style, and not only with relationships, but with my work, right? And so when things get difficult or things feel very confusing, I tend to avoid it and I tend to escape into degenerate behaviors. Whereas when I have a clear goal and a clear system in place, then I feel much more secure.
So my question to you then is this avoidance attachment style, are you able to overcome that permanently, or is this something that's like genetically wired into yourself? Because are you able to get to a point where you genuinely love the positive habits or the healthy eating healthily, going to the gym, and you don't even consider, you don't even have a second thought about doing this all the degenerate stuff? Like, do you think that's possible?
I think so. I think it's just a continuous learning process because at first you have no awareness, right? You have no awareness of any self-improvement. And then you get into self-improvement. And Hamza talks about this self-improvement depression. That shit is actually so real because once you start living like this higher version of yourself for like a long period of time, but then you slip out of it, you feel this depression because you know what you're capable of and you're actively choosing to not live up to that standard that you set for yourself. And so now it's about getting back on those good habits and sticking with them. But I do think it's normal throughout your self-improvement journey to go up a lot and then slip back into a little bit of bad habits and then go up again and then maybe slip back a little bit. And ideally, like you want the growth to be linear. You just want to improve all the time. However, I think that's I think people paint an unrealistic picture with that. Not everything is just better once you get on self-improvement in general. Like you're going to go through funks, you're going to go through periods, but I think you learn a lot about yourself during those down times. Because even these past couple weeks where I've been Monday through Thursday fucking grinding on my shit, and then I kind of slip into bad behavior sometimes in the weekend, it's made me step back and question why. And it's because of the lack of systems, it's because of the lack of clear goals. So now going forward, those are going to have to be non-negotiables for me to keep the mental health in order. Like those two things for sure. But I never would have gained the awareness that I need those things in place had I not slipped back down into a bit of degenerate behaviors. Does that make sense?
Interesting. So it's more of just a understanding of where your mindset is and your energy level at each moment in time, and being like hyper aware. Because if you're just like, oh, I'm just gonna do this, and then ends up like a weekend, ends up being like a month, ends up being a year, and you're just like, oh shit, kind of screwed. Oh, I might as well just keep going. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, as long as you're hyper aware that it's actually happening to you, that's super important. Because dude, like I don't know, I was kind of the same as well. I think my one's probably anxiety. I don't know, is that the attachment style, right? It's anxiety, yeah. Just super worried about what might happen. And so like I try to like, what's the word? You gotta put myself down, or like try to do way too much than I need and put too much pressure on myself to over deliver, or fix the relationships, or do the work to keep myself happy, to make my parents like me, to make my friends like me, to make the clients like me. That I noticed this so clearly, bro.
100%, dude. And I think I have some of that too. So there's actually a fourth attachment style that is like apparently like 1 to 3% of the population, and it's called anxious avoidance. So you go through these periods of like avoiding your work, but then you go through periods where you're very anxiously attached to it. Like I have to do more. And I feel that a lot with myself. So I wonder if I have that attachment style, but I think being aware of it is very helpful because now I'm able to understand myself on a deeper level. But I don't know. We don't have to go too deep into it, but now I'm hella curious. Like for the anxious attachment style, have you felt that in relationships throughout your life too?
Give me an example of what that kind of would look like.
Yeah. So somebody who would have an anxious attachment style in a relationship would be very jealous or very worried that the other person would leave them. Or if they don't respond for a couple hours, like, oh my God, like, are they cheating on me? Oh my God, they don't like me anymore. That would be anxious. Avoidant would be more like, all right, like I feel like I'm too close to this person. Like I'm not going to respond for like 2 days because I just don't want to think about it.
Probably a bit of both. I think in the past I used to be definitely anxious, but I think like learning all this mindset stuff and just being in this whole space, I've kind of like adopted this more of like abundance mindset. And I think this is the beauty of entrepreneurship, right? Because it kind of bleeds into relationships as well. Like you just care a lot less because there's just so much better priorities to think about. And I think I think they're kind of like environmentally / genetically wired into yourself, but I think you can definitely take yourself out of that. And so like that's kind of my journey at the moment. And so the avoidance stuff kind of, but like I'm sure you're aware as well, you have to take accountability for the shit that you're doing. Like if it's good or bad, like you just have to take accountability. You have to overcome these like tough decisions, tough conversations. So it's just a part of maturity, man. Like you literally cannot just have this unless you had like some crazy trauma in your childhood or something. Like they are very much easily fixable if you are conscious and self-aware.
100%. Self-awareness is the biggest thing in all of this, bro. And I feel like I was so on like not self-aware for the first 18 years or so of my life, maybe like 20 years of my life. But once you can cultivate that self-awareness, like your personal growth can skyrocket. And the biggest way that I've learned to do this is sitting with my thoughts in meditation. So I'm curious if you've gone down that rabbit hole of self-improvement too.
Of course, mate. I've been doing this kind of stuff. I've been trying out all the different things. I've done everything from like cold showers to like 5 a.m. to meditating for an hour to I don't know, everything you could think of, right? And for me, journaling is actually probably journaling and meditation. I think meditation probably has a less tangible outcome or benefit, but journaling for me has been insane, bro. Like sometimes I literally just sit there, take out my little journal and just write like any problem I have, anything I think about. I'm like, cool, let me just write. Let me just, what am I thinking? what is this problem? And I always end up with a solution. I always end up like, okay, cool, man. It's not actually that bad. Like you can figure this out, or maybe, oh, this is probably why you're doing it, because when you were younger, you're probably this, and this, and so right now you're probably thinking, oh, you can't do it because you never had the confidence. And I was like, mate, this is so it's a very good way to really just diagnose like why you have certain problems and why you can't overcome repetitive patterns. And then the meditation basically comes from, or the benefit of the meditation is being able to stop before you react. So that tiny 1 second interval before you like burst out in anger, before you start like screaming at someone, before you start punching someone, you're just like, okay, stop for 1 second. And being able to meditate trains that little like interval that can change anything, right? And then on top of that is also the focus as well, because you're not daydreaming so much, because you can start to bring that awareness back to the present every time you focus. So that's like, it's got multiple benefits. But I'm curious, like what are the sort of ways you kind of like meditate, journal to really cultivate that level of self-awareness as well as focus, man?
Very similar to you with the journaling. I actually pulled up mine. I got mine right here
Yes,
too.
sir. Yes,
Like
sir.
whenever I'm very confused about something or just going through a little bit of a rough period, it's like journaling is like having a conversation with yourself. And I think meditation is somewhat of the same. Like as thoughts go through, you have to have these conversations with yourself, and it's hard. It's hard. I don't think a lot of people do it now because when you're walking, you can constantly be listening to a podcast. When you're taking a shit, even like you can be on your phone consuming something. We're never just with our own thoughts other than maybe a shower, but even people play music in the shower too. Like you're never just there having a conversation with your own mind. And so something I'm trying to do now lately is two practices. So there's one called stream of consciousness journaling. Have you heard of this?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So before I write in the morning now, I set a timer for 15 minutes and I type on my computer, just let my thoughts go for 15 minutes. Just whatever comes to mind, I'm writing. No judgments. Don't worry about grammar or anything. And that kind of just like lets your brain just dump out all this excess information that it has jumbled in your head, just getting it out of your head and getting it onto paper. So I've been doing that for like 15 minutes before I write. And it's a great warm-up exercise too for your fingers. Like it sounds crazy, but just like letting your fingers just go crazy and then hopping into a deep work session, it's huge. But yeah, so for the past couple of days also, I've been trying to like take a walk in the morning with no headphones or inputs, just kind of like get present, let my mind go. And then I come back and I'll like read for a bit, and then I'll sit with my thoughts in meditation for like 30 minutes. And doing that is what helped me come to the conclusion that, okay, like I am not acting the way I necessarily know I could be acting in Buenos Aires right now. What should I do to fix it? And it came to my mind right away. It's like, I think I should go back home. I think I need to go back home. And maybe that's avoidant behavior. Maybe I'm running away from my problems. I don't know. But I also think that being back in an environment where I can have a bunch of things taken care of from a mental health perspective will help me get really back dialed in and on track. But point of the story is I would have never come to that conclusion if I never sat with my thoughts for 30 minutes in meditation.
Do you think that if you had like the business dialed down, like the thing you wanted to do, as well as like all your actions were aligned to this like purpose, do you think you would have enjoyed Buenos Aires so much more? Do you think you would have actually stayed for longer? Or what is the reason why you had that mental health sort of downturn?
I think it's a lack of clear purpose or vision, like you said, because once I got here, like the ghostwriting goal was accomplished of like move there. And so because I lacked this clear purpose or goal, you kind of this is interesting to think about. I feel like when I lack that clear purpose or goal, or anybody in general, you kind of just go through the motions of life. You get less present, you're less dialed in general. And especially as men, and like I was reading the way of the superior man, trying to figure all this out for myself. I read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning because I was like, okay, I've accomplished this dream of like moving to Buenos Aires, but like I feel like I'm lacking purpose. And what that book really talks about is like a man feels meaning when he's serving others. And I think I've lacked that over the past couple months because it's been somewhat self-interest in terms of like, all right, make the money, go trading and enjoy my life. But I'm not positively impacting as many people as I want to. And that's why I want to get more into this coaching space of like helping people get their habits in order, helping people get their fitness in order as I solve the problem myself in public and sharing my, I'm trying to be as raw and as authentic as possible because I'm sure there's so many people out there that do make the move to a foreign country. They do get into entrepreneurship, but they only portray the good stuff. They only portray like, oh, I'm at a cafe at 11 a.m. and I'm done with work for the week. And like, I'm guilty of that 100%. But I think you're doing people an injustice if you're not showing the full story. So I don't know. I don't know if I really answered your question, but
Yeah. I think there definitely is a need for more authenticity because I think it's so easy to just like show the good stuff because that's what you're going to get the validation from. People are going to be like, oh my God, like Jack's traveling. He's like dropped out of college. He's like making money online. He's a digital nomad. And so I think, I genuinely think that's where the sort of like this creator economy is shifting towards because I think people are kind of tired of this whole like perfect lifestyle. But yeah, it's interesting what you said about just the consistency and purpose and having stuff dialed in, and it does really affect your mental health if you don't have a purpose. You don't have a reason to do something, and I think that's why like even moving to Buenos Aires, which is supposed to be like a nice place, a new place, like super cheap, like nice steaks, things like that. Even with that, if you don't have the purpose, like the reason why you're doing it, it's not going to be enjoyable. And so that was similar for me, man. Like I kind of told myself that I don't want to move. I don't want to travel properly until I have something which I know is working and it's something I like to do. And it's something where I'm like, okay, cool. This is my current purpose layer. Like we're saying like purpose layers and we're trying to like work on the one we're on. Because it's adding too much. It's throwing too many variables into your mind. And I think it's very difficult to have that mental clarity when there's too much pulling you left and right. And so having a new country being thrown into the mix makes it even more difficult. And I think this is like a very good point that you've brought up because people don't see that.
I like that a lot. And you got me thinking now, like having some place where you have a home base, a very simple life could be a huge advantage because you don't have to worry about, okay, I'm in a new country. I don't even know where I'm going to get groceries. I can't even communicate with anybody. Like those things throw off your main purpose, which is the business, right? And now I do think like I gained a lot of valuable insights and experience being here. And I also don't want to portray the picture like my time here sucked. Like I'd say if I had to rate it out of 10, I had like a 7 out of 10 time, like a 7 out of 10 times. It's like it's still a good time. However, I realized like to get to that 10 out of 10, I need to do some inner work, right? It's not the city that's the problem. It's a lot of my current mental state, to be honest. But I think it's a good thought process for you in terms of like, I'm going to wait to do this traveling stuff until I like get my own shit in order. And that's a big reason that I'm deciding to kind of go home, take this little reset.
I love that, man. Tell me about what it's like to live with or spend like pretty much all your day with another person you met on Twitter. Like how was your time living with Matt? And like give me the whole experience because it's something that it's a very interesting concept because it's like, dude, you just met this guy online. And it kind of takes that you're surrounded by the 5 people you spend the most time with to like a different level. Yeah, tell me about the experience, man.
Yes. Yeah, so Matt and I originally met on Twitter back in December. I think you actually might have like recommended I reach out to him. I remember I DM'd him. He was like, yo, let's hop on a call. We hopped on a call. We started chatting like a decent amount throughout December, just on the phone, like scheming stuff. I remember we were talking about this last night, actually, which is so funny. I was driving DoorDash, bro. like trying to scrape together money to buy Dakota's coaching cohort. And he was working at a kratom tea shop behind the desk, like writing threads.
That's so
And so
funny.
we were in that exact spot in December. And then I moved out to San Francisco for school for 3 months. And he was living there for a couple months in between a little bit of a break from school, living with his parents because he lived in the suburbs of San Francisco. And so we met up a couple times, like became pretty good friends, like spent the day together. And then we started talking like, dude, I'm moving down to Buenos Aires. Like, you should come. And I was like, nah, I'm going to go finish school. Like, I'm going to go, I want to get the degree, all this stuff. And then he's like, nah, you're going to come. I'm waiting for your beliefs to change. And that's the biggest thing about being around somebody who's very like-minded and similar to you, almost like scarily like-minded and similar, is sometimes they can see from the outside you better than you can see yourself. Because as individuals, we have so many emotions that throw off our thinking and our judgment. But from the outside, sometimes I'll be like to Matt, I'm like, dude, like, I know you're going to do this thing. Or like, you just can't see it yet because you're clouded by emotions. And he'll do the same thing to me. And so it has been such a crazy benefit to have somebody who's in the same space that I'm around all the time, because we'll be at dinner. And if I'm usually at dinner with like a bunch of college friends, we're probably going to be talking about like the NBA or something, or like some surface level stuff, which is fine. Like, I like that stuff. But when like Matt and I are hanging out at dinner, we're talking about like, dude, I'm thinking about like dropping this product, or like what's the next move we need to make for our course, and like all these ideas. So it's constant shooting ideas. But also the coolest part about it is because Twitter kind of puts you into this echo chamber or bubble with very like-minded people. When you meet up with these people in real life, like, you're already instantly like on such a similar wavelength, bro. Like, if all the people from our group chats met up, like, we would be such a cool group of friends. It'd be insane. I mean, we already are, but like, if
Yeah.
it was in person, it'd be a different level.
Oh, mate, 100% resonate with everything you said, because like I went to Barcelona, right? Because we're kind of, so Jack's all the way in the States, so you kind of like go around South America, US, that kind of area. So there's a bunch of us in Europe, and so did a trip out in Barcelona because Tim's out there, and Leon's out there as well. And I was like, yeah, why not, man? Why not? Let's do it. Live with them for a week. And bro, my mindset just keeps shifting and breaking. And I'm just like, my limiting beliefs just keep, my perceptions of what I thought was true, gone. And it was like every single conversation we had just went to like level 100 level of deepness. And I was like, man, what the hell is going on, man?
It's so fun. It's so cool. I love those
Yeah.
type of times. And I have like this dream reality. Maybe it's like a dystopian reality, but in the future with the creator economy, I think all these very like-minded people are going to start to like live around each other in person, like live in the same city or live in the same town. And like, we're going to kind of go back to this tribal way of living where you have those close, like 10 to 20 people, you're living there like with them and your families. And like, that would be a crazy reality to live in. But dude, Matt and I are thinking next move, we're going to be going to Las Palmas in Spain. Like, it's an island in the Canary Islands in Spain. So I know you'll be like somewhat close. So that'd be sick if we could all meet up.
Bro, of course, man, of course. I think when are you planning to move?
Mid-July, probably.
Mid-July, okay. I'll see what I can do, because I mean it's only Spain, so it wouldn't even be that long. I could probably even do like a week. Bro, like I'm planning to transition full time into this ghostwriting thing soon. So yeah, I think it could be on the cards, bro. It could be on the cards. I'll keep you updated on Telegram, bro. But yeah, this whole space, it is crazy, man. Like how much like money Twitter, or this side of Twitter, and I'm sure there's other communities like this as well, like just change your life, man. Because like I remember when I started talking to you, you were like so set on finishing your college degree, and then you start posting on Twitter and you blew up your account by like 7K or to like 10K or whatever. And then you start landing your 2 clients and you're like, whoa, like slow down a bit, man. Like everything it went from like zero to bang. And it was just the beauty of this, right? And I really like how like freelancing is such an easy high ticket business model where you can just get into entrepreneurship like super easily, and you can understand, okay, what is actually possible, what are the money goals that are possible, like what kind of lifestyle can it support, and it's just all just possible with like this kind of business model that we've both gone down, whether that's coaching, whatever it is. And the rate of progress has just been insane. I feel like online, all of us, like everyone that we've met since we started has just blown up. Every single thing, obviously doing other stuff now, all this kind of stuff, but that's only 6 months or like 6 to 8 months, bro. Imagine end of this year, end of next year, end of the year after that. And I know that all of us are going to be consistent because we just have the network. We just literally have the network. And so like, if you and Matt keep posting and I don't, I'm like, that's disrespectful to me. I'm like, okay, I have to post. So yeah, I love this just like intangible, just like competition, or like sort of like, I don't know, sort of like under the covers kind of competition, that we're all just trying to like hype each other up, just like help each other out kind of thing. But yeah, that's a bit of a rant, bro.
Dude, like if you stop tweeting, like instantly, like within probably a couple days, I'd be like, bro, like, are you quitting? Like, what are you doing? So there's like no way any of us are gonna stop.
100 million%. My last question to you then is, two questions then. What are your plans for next 6 months? And then the second question is, what challenge, I'm trying to copy Danny Miranda here, what challenge would you give someone who's listening to this podcast?
Okay, I'll start with the first one, the 6 months, 12 months. Right when you asked the question, I had this internal thought. I was like, I need to get clearer on my long-term planning. I need to get clearer on like 6-month goals, 12-month goals, because it's not very clear for me right now. But I think number one is just consistency, getting back on good habits. I'm super excited about that. 2, launching this coaching offer and like building a coaching program for that would be phenomenal. And then 3, cutting out YouTube, cutting out the fitness business and focusing that energy back into the podcast. And so I have an editor for YouTube and I'm just pivoting him into editing the podcast now and like really trying to get serious with that, because the only thing I think really holding me back from getting bigger time guests and like actually making this thing go is production quality. And like, that's something I've been really lacking. And so having him solve that problem for me opens that up. So I think those are the 3 main vectors, like consistency, growing on Twitter, launching the coaching offer, and then keep continuing to grow the podcast. Those are really the 3 main focuses, I would say. However, I think I need to get more clear on those. And then what would I challenge somebody to do listening to this podcast? Trying to think who would be listening to this podcast at this point of the episode. What type of person would
no one, bro? No one.
There might be a few. I would say Danny Miranda style, actually. Try sitting with your thoughts for 60 minutes. Like literally sit down in your room, have your eyes open or closed, whatever you prefer, set a timer for 60 minutes and literally just let your mind go. Like turn inward to solve external problems. That's how Danny's been talking about it lately. And I love his message. So all the greatest decisions I've made and all the biggest decisions I've made over the past 6 months have come from sitting with my thoughts for a prolonged period of time. So that's my challenge. Try it one time.
Love it. Ladies and gentlemen, Jack Moses. Let's go. Let's go. Right. I'm going to stop this now. I don't know if it's going to end. Wait, can I just... Wait, manage recording. Stop recording.